Hello and welcome back to the Learning Network. You're with Kell Bell, and today I'm sharing with you how you can analyse your HSC results more effectively this year. Now, at the time of recording, we have our HSC results coming out literally tomorrow, and I know those butterflies are starting to swirl around because if you're a senior teacher, it's this time of year that you start to unpack, I suppose, what you've been doing for 2 years essentially with your students. So HSC results come out tomorrow. Our students get their results and we get to see how they go. So it's always a nerve-wracking time for both the students, but also HSC teachers as well. And look, in my 16 years of being a HSC teacher, I would often have lack of sleep the night before as we await those elusive results that our HSC students receive that morning. So I'm going to share with you 4 simple ways that you can analyse your HSC data more effectively for this year. And moving forward, I hope that you can apply these strategies time and time again. So the first one is a break. So number 1 is have a look at the number of bands you get in each of the ranges. So how many band 6s, how many band 5s, how many band 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s, and then record that. I have a spreadsheet for you. If you head over to thelearnnet.com/HSC results, you'll have access to that, as well as some other prompts that you might like to consider. But of course, if you're in our CAFS or HMS membership, we'll spend a whole session next year looking at HSC results. We're going to have a guest expert come in again, and we're going to dive into those results next year. But I really want you to have a look at those bands and simply capture what students got what. So how many band 5s, 6s, and so on. And what I'd love for you to do this year is compare it to last year's, the year before's, and the year before that. A really great diagram inside our RAP analysis is our band history diagram. I think you view it as potentially a bar graph, and it shows you, how many band 6s, how many 5s, 4s, 3s, and 2s, and then along the bottom on the axis, y-axis, I think, or is that an X? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. You'll see what the breakdown is of the year. So it shows you, I think, probably the last 10 years what that breakdown is, and I think that's a really great snapshot for you as a teacher, especially if you've been the same teacher, or if there's been a different teacher come in. You can kind of reflect on that and go, okay, well, what are we doing well? Like, what is this data telling us? What improvements do need to be made as a result of this? Have we dropped the ball maybe at the top end, or have we really increased or reduced that bottom end, the tail end? Have we actually bumped our students up a little bit? And then answer some questions or ask some questions around that in terms of what you're going to do more of that next year or less of that. So number 1 is really looking at that breakdown of bands and work out how many students got a 6 all the way down to number 1. And then you can kind of start to ask yourself some questions about what that means in terms of data and moving forward. Okay, number 2 is looking at the state average. Now, this kind of is always a tricky one, and your principal, especially your exec, deputies, assistant principal, curriculum coordinators, all those sorts of people will ask you this question: were you above the state average? Were you below the state average? We were always above the state average, which was really nice in my 16 years of teaching CAFS, so that's very reassuring for me. But I think that gives us a really good indication as to how we're faring across the state. Now, I know that some years we have different students. Some of our kids have some mental health issues that pop up. Some of our kids have some pretty traumatic, circumstances that they experience. But I think that data really paints a picture as to how we're going against the state. Like, are we kind of dragging the chain, or are we up there with the best of the best? I would love for you this year to be the best performing subject at your school. Let me know how you go. Over the next couple of days, we're going to be sending you messages to ask you, like, how did you go? Like, how did your students, go in PE and CAFS? Would love to share and celebrate those successes, because I think many times we focus on the elusive band 6, but we don't really focus on those big wins, which are, we were above the state average this year. We increased our number of marks above the state average by X percentage. So really looking at, okay, were you above the state average this year or were you below the state average? If you were above the state average, what made you get there? Like, what was your little recipe to success? If you weren't above the state average this year, what can you do to improve for 2024? Because I think, you don't want to be average. Like, I don't want to be average. You don't want to be average. Let's try to boost those results for next year. Okay, the other one that I'd love for you to think about tomorrow when you get your HSC results, when they're emailed to you from your principal or you get that printout on your desk, I'd love to for you to have a look at very briefly your school versus HSC assessment. Now, these 2 marks are not equal. And what I mean by that is your school-based assessment should be like a true reflection of your students' ability. Obviously, it's a percentage. We put all of our marks in to our system, if it's Central or whatever other system that you're using to collect data. It then spits out a number. Obviously, it's a percentage. Each of our tasks are worth a certain percentage. And that's the mark that gets sent to NESA. Just a reminder for everyone, especially those who are new to HSC, you need to be making sure you do a couple of things. You need to make sure your students are actually separated, that your assessment tasks are rigorous, that they are a true reflection of how your students are going. So making sure you have an even distribution, amongst your students in terms of their marks. You can't inflate marks. So if if your kids get an 85, you can't bump it up to a 95 and send that into NESA. NESA will find you out. NESA will have a conversation with your principal. And I've seen it happen before where teachers get pulled in to say, well, this isn't actually a true reflection of your students' ability. What happened? Was there any tampering with those marks? You should be sending in marks that are that percentage. You shouldn't be inflating or changing that. Now, the biggest thing you cannot do is put 2 students on number 1. You need to make sure after each assessment task that you're very happy with the 2 at the top. Like if there's 2 kids who get 18 out of 20, are you happy with saying that these 2 are exactly the same student? Because at the end of the day, if their HSC results go in at like equal first, you're then going to have a few issues with those bands that are awarded. Never send any equal firsts in. We learned the hard way. A deputy principal at some point, I obviously had a look at our data. I made sure we had one student was at 90.5. The other student was 91.56 or something. Whatever it was, our deputy actually put them both on 91. So we had equal firsts. What happened was that our students actually didn't get a band 6 because if you add those 2 together, divide it doesn't actually equate to having that really clear mark. So please make sure you're not sending in equal firsts. Many schools have become undone with the band 6s because of that. It's actually affected the kids. So that's a little aside. Of course, if you're in our memberships, please ask 1,000 questions because I know that HSC results and data and stuff get a little bit confusing. So look at your school versus HSC assessment. Now, keeping in mind that your HSC assessment is a moderated mark based on how your students have gone at school. So it's a moderated mark. It's not really like a true reflection of their raw mark in the exam. And their exam mark that you see on the HSC certificate isn't actually their mark. So you have to do some work in the background to find out what the kids have, how they've gone for the HSC. So if you're new to HSC, please ask some questions because I know there's still a lot of miscommunication out there, and some of our principals, some of our exec team and leadership teams don't actually know the true picture. So our school assessment is our percentage based on all of our, our assessment tasks, based on their weightings. Our HSC assessment is a combo of our school and exam, like percentage exam, put together. But that exam mark is moderated based on how the kids go at school. So that exam mark that you see on the paper isn't actually their true mark. It's a moderated mark based on how the kids have gone that particular year. So to work out the raw mark of your kids, like what do they get out of 100 as a raw mark, we've got a spreadsheet for you to help you with that. Many of you have loved this over the years. If you would love a copy of that, head over to thelearnet.com/HSC HSC results. We're updating that today, ready for tomorrow for both PE and CAFS. So you can grab that, but also looking at your data really effectively. And what that does in this spreadsheet is break down each question by question. So for multiple choice, you need to work in and go into item analysis in your wrap data and work out what the kids got out of, 1, 2, 3, all the way through to the exam and what marks they got for each question. Again, if you have any questions, I know this might seem really overwhelming for some of you, please send me a DM, ask me a question, because this data is really important. This data tells us so much about how we're going, how our kids are going, our cohort, our typical cohort, and what we can do to actually move forward in our learning. Which brings me to number 4, our 4th strategy to help you unpack your HSC results tomorrow. Our HSC results come out tomorrow. I know some of you have messaged me and said, oh, Kell, I'm a bit nervous about this. You can't change it, but you can certainly use your data to make some big decisions for next year. Okay, so the number 4 one is using my beautiful strategy for feedback, which is win feedback. Many of you know that. If you're not sure about what that looks like, both in our CAFS Collective membership and our HSC membership, you'll have lots of resources around what that looks like. But in a nutshell, WIN stands for what you've done well, really simple. What are the good things? The I stands for improvements to be made, what can you do to improve, either in yourself or the kids themselves, and then necessary actions to improve. So WIN feedback stands for what they've done well, improvements to be made, and then necessary actions. Now, of course, our HSC kids aren't going to sit down and do this. You have to do that work for them. What did we do well in 2023? What improvements do we need to make for next year and beyond that? And then necessary actions, your kids aren't going to do that for you. You can do this when they're doing their school-based assessment. But for HSC data, you have to make that decision okay, this is what the data is telling us. What actions are we going to take next year to improve on our HSC results? Because you can make a huge, big impact on your HSC results by making a few tiny tweaks to make some big changes with what you do with your kids. So look, I could sit here, seriously, I could run 2 professional learning days, comprehensive days, to help you unpack your data, to look at your results, to help you make decisions on what you can do to move forward. And we're going to do that inside our CAFS Collective membership, as well as our HSC membership, HMS membership for our members. But if you want a simple, a couple of prompts and the spreadsheet, head over to thelearnnet.com/HSC results, and you'll have access to a spreadsheet for both PDHPE as well as CAFS to help you unpack your data. So let's quickly unpack the 4 strategies that you can implement this year to make some big decisions on your HSC results. Number 1 was breakdown of bands. When you get your HSC results tomorrow, have a look at how many 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and then answer some questions that you've developed around that, did this increase, decrease? Please don't focus so much on that elusive band 6. It's really hard. To get a band 6, the kids have to be averaging 90% for all assessment tasks. That's really tricky. So, keep that in mind. Number 2 was look at your state average. Were you above the state average or were you below the state average this year? Again, ask yourself some questions. Number 3 was look at your school versus HSC assessment. Again, some ponderings around that. Did some kids pull their finger out and actually achieve some really good marks? What happens there, though, is that because their school-based assessment is worth 50%, sometimes there's a disparity between that. They do really well in the exam, but because they've done so poorly at school, it then drags them down to maybe a band 3 or 4. So again, and it's usually those kids, those 3 to 4s, that really see a big improvement at HSC time, HSC exam time I'm talking about. So again, ask yourself some questions around that. And number 4 is to implement our WIN feedback strategy, which I've been using for, I reckon, over maybe 12 years or so to help you unpack feedback, results, everything, even about your own practice. So if you would love a spreadsheet, if you would love some more support on this, the free way to get the spreadsheet is head over to thelearnnet.com/HSC results. But if you would love me to help you, I can't look at your RAP data, but you can give me some data to think about, to ponder on. If you would love to really next year improve your HSC results, the CAFS Collective and the Health and Movement Science membership is going to be your best way to do that. Of course, the PE syllabus next year will be our second last year through of the HSC, but there's some things that you can make just in that talk, that 18 months to improve. So I hope that today has given you some strategies to help move you forward, but also to unpack HSC results tomorrow. If you would love to share your HSC results with us, the good, bad, and the ugly, no, it shouldn't be ugly, it should be all learnings, please send me a DM on Instagram, a message on Facebook, or you can contact us at contact@thelearnnet and contact@thelearnnet.com. Sorry, if you would love to share your results, and obviously we can think about what that might look like for next year. In the meantime, have the best day, and I can't wait to hear how your students go for their HSC. Take care.